All right. Good day to you. I'm Ahmad Desmond. I'm a computer science student, and this will be the first tutorial of several on teaching you computer algorithms using pseudocode. So the first topic we'll kick off with is called unregisterable. Basically, this tutorial or set of tutorials will be targeted towards first year students finding difficulties in Algeria. So I'll be explaining in French, but most of the writings will be in French, but I'll be explaining properly in a way you understand, throwing more light in respect to what your teachers have taught you. So we're starting with enregistrement, which is directly translated into English as record. So now, an enregistrement contains champ. And what is a champ? Translated to English, fields. Fields are items contained in a record. For example, in a hospital, they have a record of sick patients, and these sick patients are diagnosed with various sicknesses. So the kinds of sicknesses can be tagged as the field items in a particular sickness. So that is what a record basically is. So let's go on with an example. We want to write an algorithm that will study the GPA of several students and arrange their GPs in descending order. So let's say the highest with a GPA of 20, the more general of 20, then 15, 4, like that. So first off, we start with the name of the algorithm. We'll call this algorithm etude. We must always start with the name of the algorithm and a semicolon to end it. Then we'll put a type. A type defines basically what kind of algorithm we are working on. So we call this any name. I'll call this T étudiant. You can call it étudiant, you can call it student or whatever. Now we use an equal to sign to define that this T étudiant represents what? It will be representing a record. So a record, as we know, is enregistrement. So I said an enregistrement, a record, contains field items. So we know that a student's basic items would be the surname, and what would the surname be categorized under? What kind of variable is it? Is a string. So it's chain in French. We define the maximum length of the string. We'll say 25. Then the name, which will be a string as well, 25. Then we want the person's matriculation number, call it mat. A mat is an integer, which in French is entier. Then we have the faculty of the person, filière. Filière is a chain of 10. So the GP, which is moyenne générale in French. So a GP is a floating variable, which is real in French. So we write fin. This fin in C, when coding it on an IDE, will be the curly braces which closes like this. So we need the variables that will be associated to this record. So we declare the variables now with var. I'll call this te. What type is it? Is a table, tableau of 100 elements. Now, what type of table is this? What will the table be containing? The table will contain T étudiant to contain the field items of the T étudiant. This will be TO, tableau de T étudiant. Then we close. Then we need a counter that would run through and do the work we ask, that is to check for each GP and see that which is bigger or smaller, and we'll know how to arrange it in a loop. So we'll have our I there, and we'll have an N. Let's say the N basically would calculate the length of the table. Let's say the person wants to calculate for 10 students. Yes, the table can contain 100 students, but he or she chose 10 students. So we use N to run through and calculate for the amount of persons the user chose. Then, what type is it? It's an integer. So we begin. Début to start. Répéter. The function of répéter here is to go through each item. After it handles one, it goes through up onto the last one the user chose. So it's just to facilitate it running each time, and we not like checking one by one. It makes it faster, best put. So lire, it will scan the length of the table jusqu'à n superior or equal at 0. That is, n is positive and n is less than or equal to 100, the set limit of the table. So if the person chooses 101, it will not work. So what do we do next? We need to study each of the items. Each of the item in the table, in the record. So we use a for loop. For I, the I is the counter, as I said, from 1. So the counter will be starting from 1 to n. This first, the opening curly braces. Scan TE. So the function of TE here, as I told you, would be that it will associate itself to T étudiant. And what does T étudiant contain? Each of the field items. So we take TE, associate it with the num, we scan it, we study for the name, we study for the surname, and the rest. So we say TE of I. So TE, the table at position 1, because we said I begins from 1, it will go to 2 continuously. Point, the name, TE, point, surname, TE, point, matricule, te point filet. And final one, te point moyen général. So this will scan each of the item, and we use fay. Fay would be the closing bracket. So would display the items with a for loop again. So for I, from 1 to n, faire. Now there's something I'll say real quick. There's an instruction called avec. The instruction avec avoids the thing of using this te at every interval. So as you can see, we have it very long here. We can just use avec te of I, then we'll write all other things we want to do. So we'll see it. So we'll say avec in capital or in small, te of I, we'll say faire, because it's more like a loop itself. So we want to display what we scanned. Écrit nom, prénom, maths, filier, de moyen général, fait. So now we're at the point where we have to handle the sorting of the GPs, the moyen général, in descending order. So we'll loop it as well using the for loop, which is pour I de 1 à n moins 1. Now I'll explain why it's n moins 1 in some minutes. So we say faire. Now we'll be comparing two items together, the item in the first table with the item in the next table, which is the second. So if it's 20 and 19, we compare, we see that 20 is bigger than 19. It's good like that. We want it in descending order. But if we find like 15 and 17, we want to interchange it. So I has to have like the next one, so we need a j. So we add the variable j to do a comparison with the next one. So we say pour j, which is I plus 1, the next one, do I plus 1 à n. Now the function of n moins 1, why I wrote this is because at the second to the last item, let's say the user wanted to compare the GP of 50 students. At the second to the last, the 49th item, when we compare it with the next item, which is the 50th item, it will automatically see if it is less or big. If it meets the condition we want, it will leave it that way. Else, it will interchange on its own. That's why we specially left this case. Now we say faire. We compare using the if statement. We say if TE, the E, sorry, I'm using E like French, of moyen général is less than TE I, sorry, J here, because we're in the first one. If the first one is less than the next one, then this allo would do a permutation. So to do a permutation, we need a holding variable, a temporary holding variable that will hold what we want to change, create the change, and drop what we held previously. So we would add a holding variable. So let's call this X. So now TE is less, and we don't want it to be less. We actually want the greater one. So X will hold TE of I. And TE of I will take the bigger one. So here when X holds TE of I, T of I becomes empty. If here was 17 and TE of J had 20, we'll take TE of I, which is 17, and hold in X, then we'll collect the 20. So TE of I will collect TE of J. Then TE of J will take X. So we have interchanged them using permutation. So TE of I becomes 20 and TE of J becomes 17. So this is how we start the rearrangement to get our sorting in decreasing order. So the permutation would work at each time. It will compare the first one with the second one. After that, the second will compare with the third, continuously up until the length of n. So we close the if statement using FSI, which is found to C. Then we use two for loops, so we'll close them using fe, which, as I said, they are closing brackets in C on the IDE. Now we have permitted everything, and we need to display them. We need to display the new table items. So we see now a new table of elements that are in descending order or decreasing order. So we use the for loop again, because the for loop will cover everything. And why the for loop is preferable is because we don't need to do an incrementation at each time using I plus equals 1 or I plus plus. So we use the for loop for I from 1 to n. Fair. Écrit. T de I of I. Fair. Now, why I wrote it like this, you were expecting to write T to E of name, prenom, and all other items, is because we must always display the record. We cannot display one item of the record. It has to be displayed all in all. It is in cases when we are treating an item in the record that we handle it, but when we are displaying it or we are doing a general scan, we have to treat every item of the record. So we close this. This would show us the new record in decreasing order, and we use far. So this brings us to the end of the video. I hope you understand it very well. If you don't, leave a comment below and I'll get right back to you. Thank you.